afternoon.
Jack
Hello.
coming, right?
Anybody hear me okay? Okay. In order for us to have a panel here today, we need to have some panelists, and we have two so far, so we got one more coming. We're going to give Jack a few minutes. He went downstairs to use the restroom. Speaking of restrooms are located on the ground floor. A little housekeeping for you. Restrooms are located on the ground floor. And I was asked to also remind some folks, if you like cake, there's some out there in the hallway left over. We had a really good lunch for our panelists and the committee this morning. We're here, right, because of family and friends, a reunion. And I feel like it's coming together because when I look across this rail, I see a lot of family, I see a lot of friends. So give yourself a round of applause for being here. So, in the communal spirit and the tribal tradition, before I could speak, I need to get permission from one of my elders. Mrs. Matthews, do I have your permission to speak today? Thank you so much. Give it up. Okay. We'll give Jack a few minutes. We okay, Tori? Okay. Talk amongst your friends and your family. Just in his fashion, he wanted to be the last one to come into the room. Internationally acclaimed. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Welcome, everyone. Again, thanks for being here. The McLean County Museum of History is part of the McLean County Historical Society, which is an Illinois 501c3 not-for-profit. We are an entity of the Historical Society. And approximately 70% of our funding comes from private donations. Since its earliest days in the 19th century, community support has been critical to the museum's continued existence. So, if you're not already a member, consider joining in support of preservation of local history. Stop at the front desk to learn more about how you can support the museum. Some other housekeeping here. This program is being live streamed. A special thank you to our live stream sponsor, WGLT, Bloomington-Normal's public media, part of the NPR network. The Bloomington-Normal Black History Project was founded in 1982, and its collection spanned the 19th and 20th century. Collection contains oral histories, portraits, booklets, community artifacts, articles, photocopies related to clubs, organizations, and the local people in the Black community. In 1989, the Black History Project became affiliated with the McLean County Historical Society, which now serves as a repository for the project's collections. And we are really, really grateful for that. At this time, I would like Mrs. Elaine Hill to come up. Elaine Hill is part of the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project as well. She's on the committee. Elaine, would you like to bless us with the Negro National Anthem again this week? All right, take it away.
If you would please stand. Lift Every Voice and Sing was written by James W. Johnson in 1899, and his brother John R. Johnson put it to music. And when he did put it to music and his brother heard the music that was put to the poetry, he wept. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as a rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a place that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from a gloomy past, here now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. As always, whew, my goodness, my Lord. Again, welcome. We're not going to belabor. You ready, Jack? You ready? Okay. Everybody good? We're good? All right. Let's meet the moderator. Let's meet the moderator. For more than 2 decades, professional blues drummer Andrew Blaze Thomas has given music a pulse through his precision and precise rhythm on the drums. Now, as Illinois State University history graduate, Mr. Thomas is shifting his focus to amplifying history. Andrew holds a bachelor's degree from Western Illinois University. He's a teacher. And of course, we mentioned a graduate student of history at ISU, and that's the most important part for us today because he has done a wealth of work in collecting the stories of local African Americans, and you'll hear about that today. So without further ado, please help me give a warm welcome to Andrew Blaze Thomas.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening. Thank you for that wonderful, wonderful welcome. Before I begin, I am excited to announce that the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project has amassed over 100 oral histories since its inception in 1982. I have here 10 more. So I'm so excited to add this to the archive. This is a special day for us. Please take this. As I mentioned before, my name is Andrew Thomas. I am the chairperson for the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project. And this is a discussion and a celebration of African American musicians in safe spaces in Bloomington-Normal. It's being broadcast on 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org. These 3 panelists that we have here today participated in the oral histories that we just archived with the museum. I have on my far left a world-renowned opera singer and actor. He's been in some huge plays and productions we know as Porgy and Bess and Hair. And also, he's been on television in Europe. I don't want to give his whole story away, but without further ado, we have Mr. Jack Waddell.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on talking, keep on fighting, marching up to freedom land. Everybody sings, keep on talking, keep on fighting, marching up to freedom line. Everybody stand, please. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. We're gonna keep on talking, keep on fighting, marching up the freedom line. One more time, ain't gonna let, come on now, body, turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. We're gonna keep on talking, keep on fighting, marching up the freedom line.
Well, after that, I don't think I have nothing more to say. Thank you so much, Mr. Waddell, for getting the tone set for this panel. Next to Mr. Waddell, we have the wonderful Miss Carolyn Ware. Carolyn Ware, she represents Now, I was saying before that this panel is a celebration of African American musicians and safe spaces. Well, it turns out that Carolyn Ware, she represents both because she is a musician. She was the pianist and I'm sure the minister of music over at Mount Pisgah Church. So that represents a safe space that black people could get together, worship, and just be. And also, she represents the music side of this program. So please show your love for Miss Carolyn Ware. And on my immediate left, I have what I consider a good friend of mine. This very good brother. I've known him for a few years. He's the proprietor of Jazz Up Front. Immediately after this event, we're gonna go over to his club and we're gonna just be. It's a safe place here in town that I like to hang out when I have some time, you know, to kick back and talk to my people and listen to some good jazz music. He's the proprietor of Jazz Up Front. Please show your love for Mr. James.
Yeah.
First, I'm going to start with Mr. Jack Waddell. Can you please tell our lovely crowd here today, how did you begin your career singing opera music?
Well, now, quite a story. Before the panel began, I asked Anthony for permission if I could relate an anecdote that occurred in New York City, which I find relevant right now. One of the largest parades, I lived in Manhattan for 20 years before I moved to Bloomington, and one of the largest parades in New York City is the African American Harlem Parade. Before I moved, I said, every year I've attended, they marched right up Lenox Avenue, 125th, right the heart of Harlem. And as I attended, all the politicians, the prominent politicians in New York City, the former David Dinkins, Mayor Dinkins, the first African-American mayor of Manhattan, Al Sharpton, all of your luminaries in the African community, American community. And as the parade passed by, a huge lady walked by me, and she was shaking hands quite vigorously, as a matter of fact. She grabbed my hand, and she shook my hand, and I turned to my friend and I said, "Who is that?" He said, "That is Letitia James, the first African-American female to be elected Attorney General in New York City. Remember her name. I remembered her name. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I remembered it joyfully to see her on TV in the last couple of days. It relates to our African American history. It's relevant to the fact that an African American Attorney General takes down a luminary such as Donald Trump. Enough said. What was your question again?
Well, that was a paramount statement, but I was just asking about your beginning, your influences even on becoming an opera singer.
I'm a native Bloomingtonian. I graduated from Bloomington High School in 1959, the last graduating class from the old Bloomington High School before they moved out on Locust. And I played football, and I tell a story in a cabaret that I did recently in Bloomington, which I hope to repeat. It's called Full Circle, from Bloomington to New York City to Berlin and back. And it's chronicled by slides that were made for my TV show in Germany, the plays that I did in Germany, in Holland, all throughout Europe, Italy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In my senior year, after having played football for 40 years, I wondered, what am I going to do? And unfortunately, I was injured. I played all 4 years at Bloomington High School, Coach Blois Best. And he approached me one day and said, now, Waddell, are you gonna play football or are you gonna sing? Because I was a member of the a cappella choir. And my mentor, Mary Stoke, she recently passed. She was 101 years of age. She appeared and said, he's gonna do both. And I did, as a matter of fact. As fate would have it, I no longer could continue playing football. So she said, you're gonna be a singer. I said, yeah, ha. Singing in Bloomington High School a cappella choir is one thing, but pursuing a singing career in Bloomington, Illinois, not very likely. Fast forwarding, Twin City Recreation Center, you mentioned that. That's actually where it began for me. Professor Henry Charles of Illinois Western University, head of the vocal department, he ventured not far from here, right? It was Center Street, right over there by the viaduct. The only, which direction Jeff is pointing this? Oh, this way, come in. Hank Charles came to Twin City where he said, I'm going to form a choir, and we'll here at the Twin. At that time, it was not actually fashionable for a professor from a university, or from any university of that fact, to appear in Twin City Recreation Center and say, I'm going to form an African-American choir, and which he did. And I was very enthusiastic about the whole thing. Unfortunately, I was the only one who persevered. And Hank Charles said, well, you're the only one that showed up for rehearsal tonight. He said, Jack, he said, how would you like to take private voice lessons? I think you have what it takes. I said, really? I said, well, Hank, I have to be quite frank. I can't afford to pay for private voice lessons. And Hank said, well, no, I've got windows to be washed. I got lawns to be mowed. I said, I'm in. I'm so there. And that's how it actually began. Much to my surprise, I was given a scholarship to Illinois Wesleyan University. I was one of few African Americans to have attended there. I did obtain a performance degree, Bachelor of Fine Arts in Performance. And again, fast forwarding, I began teaching young mentees, proteges. And I'm surprised Ms. Ware by telling me she can verify the fact. She was still in high school, she's much younger than I. And she was one of my students. And I said, you're gonna go to the state contest and you're gonna compete. And compete she did, and when she did, first place at All-State University. I'm sure you remember that.
I do.
But that's pretty much how it began. And I think it absolutely important, imperative that we impart this to young people, self-determination. When I graduated from Illinois Wesleyan in 1963, again, Professor Hank Charles said, he said, now, Jack, he said, you're gonna have to do some education courses because you're going to teach. You're gonna teach in a high school, junior high school, whatever, and pursue your career. I said, but Hank, I have a professional singing degree. I want to pursue the field of opera. And he laughed, not maliciously. He was very realistic. He said, we've got to have a talk. He says, now, 1963, there were few people, to name a few. Leontine Price at that time was just coming into her own. She had just gone over to Germany and was discovered. And it was he says, now, Leontine Price is one thing. For an African-American male, it's far more difficult. He said, you're not going to have an operatic career here in America. And so I said, well, I've read that in Germany they have more opera houses per capita than any other country in the world, and still do. I said, I'll go to Germany. And everybody laughed, included Hank. Enter self-determination. Never let anyone define you. Never let anyone tell you what you cannot do. He said, you don't speak German. What are you going to do? You're going to possess? Well, I'll learn how to speak German. I learned how to speak Italian, singing my first Italian opera here on West. And I did. Long story short, in 1968, I flew to Germany. I attended the Goethe Institute, which is equivalent to the Berlitz language school here in America, and studied in Berchtesgaden. At that time, it's the well-known Hitler's Eagle's Nest, where Hitler went to recoup from his losses during the Second World War. And I did an intensive case in studying German. Directly, 1968, I went to Munich from Berchtesgaden, and I made my debut. And my debut was a memorial concert to Dr. Martin Luther King, who had just been assassinated. And this launched my German and my European career. I did a memorial concert for Dr. Martin Luther King, all Negro spirituals. It took off. It was my big break. I went to Munich, to Frankfurt, to Berlin, to Holland, to Paris, and that was it. So that's how I began.
Wow, wonderful. For those who are just not tuning in to our live stream, this is the second part of a discussion panel. The Bloomington-Normal Black History Project presents a reunion of neighbors, friends, and musicians. And of course, today we are gathered here to celebrate our African-American musicians and safe spaces here in Bloomington-Normal. Miss Carolyn Ware, I understand that your family has a huge legacy here in Bloomington-Normal, especially your dad, when it comes to the Black church. Can you tell us the name of your father's name and his legacy here?
Yes, my father's name was Henry L. Brown, and he moved here from Memphis, Tennessee, and we first went to Union Baptist Church, and then we went to Mount Pisgah Baptist Church, where I'm still a member.
We talked in our interview together that your father remodeled the church here?
Yes, he went to Mount Pisgah. He said the Lord led him to go there to help renovate the sanctuary and the fellowship hall at Mount Pisgah Baptist Church.
I find it also interesting, since we are celebrating safe spaces, that your parents met at the church. Is that correct?
Yeah, they met at church, but that was in Memphis, Tennessee, at Tree of Life Baptist Church, and that's where they met in church.
And then, of course, they brought you.
They moved to Bloomington.
And they encouraged you and your family to attend the church here.
Oh yes, church was our life.
Can you tell us about how you started playing piano at Mount Pisgah?
Well, first I started playing piano at Union Baptist. After I had gotten baptized, I was about 12. And they're gonna find a job for you to do. You're not gonna come sit on the bench. So they started a children's choir, and I played for the children's choir at Union Baptist first. And then when we went to Mount Pisgah Baptist, I helped start the youth choir. And I played for all the choirs. Once upon a time, I played for the adult choir, the youth choir, the male chorus, and the children's choir. So I did full circle and ended up playing, my last choir to play for was the children's choir, which is the Sunbeam Choir at Mount Pisgah Baptist Church. So I played for over 50 years.
Now, from my understanding, you also taught piano.
I did. I taught piano, but my first pupil was my first cousin, Delmar Brown. And Delmar he didn't know his ABCs, and he couldn't even count. So, first of all, Delmar was our very first cousin. We had other cousins, but we didn't know them because they didn't live in this area. And so Delmar was our very first cousin, so we spent a lot of time with Delmar. So I taught Delmar how to count, I taught him his ABCs, and then I started teaching him music. And I didn't realize he was gonna be such a famous musician when I started teaching him. Oh, I guess I might have been about 9 or 10 when I started teaching Delmar piano lessons. So I was one of his first pupils. He was my first pupil.
And for those who don't know, Delmar Brown, he was a huge star here in Bloomington-Normal. He went on to play piano for Sting. So yeah, he's a world-renowned musician. And we have here Mr. James Gadsden. Like I said before, he's the proprietor of Jazz Up Front. But I understand that when we're talking about safe spaces, you know, the church, the institution of Black church is a safe space, but also a safe space could be a place where you get your hairdo done or get your hair cut, which obviously I don't need anymore, but we understand that your father was owner of a barbershop. Can you tell us about your dad, his name? And
my dad, everybody, most of these people in here know him, or a lot of them I can see knew him. Robert L. Gaston, and he was from Pearl, Mississippi. And my mother told me when she met my dad, he was playing blues on the corner. And they met and, of course, fell in love and went on to have 12 kids. And my dad was working, the story he told me, he was working at General Electric way back when, and he got tired of watching people get promotions past him, so he decided to pursue his own business, and he became a barber. First cutting, I can remember cutting hair in our house. People in the neighborhood would come over and get haircuts, and then next thing you know, he got his first barbershop. And thanks to a white gentleman, my dad told me that he had his eye on the building, and they wouldn't rent the building to him because he was a black man. So a white friend of his said, "Bob, I'll take care of that." So he rented the building and sold the lease to my dad for $1. And he moved into his first barbershop, which was on Center Street, the corner of Center and Grove. And I don't remember the year, but I was a little kid then at that time. And the rest is history. I think my dad had several different locations for his barbershop. My brother Gary went on to become a barber. I got several sisters that were in the hair business. I have nieces that have their own businesses, beauty shops and stuff like that. So, you know, that's how it all got started, with my dad deciding that, you know, he was going to pursue his own business and take care of his 12 kids. God love him.
Now, as you can tell that here in Bloomington-Normal, there's a rich history of Black proprietorship. Can you tell us about a man named Mr. Bob Bacon?
Well, you know, one of these panelists here could probably tell you more about Bob Bacon than me. I know that Bob Bacon and me were always in the same business. He always had clubs and restaurants, and I've been involved in several, and, you know, worked for a lot of people in the business and stuff. But Mr. Bacon was always Mr. Bacon to me. So as far as, you know, I didn't really know him personally. You know, I never really, you know, hung out with him or, you know, this or that. But I always knew him, and he was always a gentleman, one of the nicest, quietest men I've ever met. So he always treated me very, very well. That's all I can say about Mr. Bacon.
You know, when we talked, after I reviewed the transcripts of our conversation, I saw some things. I was putting two and two together, so to speak. And I noticed that your dad played music with Mr. Jack Waddell's brother, Art Waddell.
I'm sure that happened at some time or another, yes. I mean, there was several musicians, black musicians in town, and I think at one time or another they were all in the same group. You know, over the years, you know, I can remember several guys, Sims Miller and Art Waddell and oh God, Marvin Thomas. Oh yeah, Marvin. Holland Wolf. his name was Robert Lee Herbert, but there was a lot of guys that were always, popping up in the same band and doing stuff and Bobby Hopkins, he was not from Bloomington, but he moved here, and he was a singer that sang with a lot of these different groups and stuff over the years. So yeah, I'm sure that, they all played together at one time or another.
Apropos singer, the Gaston's family was very musical. Bebop, everybody knew Bob as Bebop. And I was reminded by one of my alumnus that Bebop would sing and win the talent show at Bloomington High School every year. And they would often make him repeat the song that he did several times. He was so good.
Right, and then Bob went on to, he joined the military, joined the Navy, and he sang for the all-Navy band, and he was in the Navy for 20 years. And they toured all over the world, and he was the lead vocalist for the all-Navy band, so for years. So
That we have in common as well. I was in the Army chorus, and for these groups you had to audition. It was a professional audition. They flew people in the country. I sang at the White House for President Johnson, and so I'm sure he had quite a career. I knew he had the goods to be a professional singer, and I didn't know we had that in common. When you came out of basic training, you were an automatic sergeant, Spec 5, and so many people like Bebop and myself made careers, After 20 years, also Alan.
right.
Alan was incredible. I used to visit Alan in New Orleans. When he came back after 20 years of being, a first sergeant?
Right.
And so he got a nursing degree and had a very fine career. So Gaston family is renowned for its versatility and musicality.
We had several musicians in the family, or vocalists. My brother David,
Yeah.
he had a band called the Shattertones. I'm sure some people in here have heard of them. They were probably one of the biggest local bands to come out of this town at the time. Along with Tim Irvin was in the band, and some other musicians in this town. But they were a pretty big deal. I remember that when I was a kid, which made me want to go on and be, like my brother. So I was in a band for several years too, and then my little brother Gary, he's in a band. He's still in bands. He's not a quitter like the rest of us. So yeah, there was a lot of musicians in the band. Even the sisters could sing. So everybody,
Yeah.
that's what we did, man.
At that time, too, the venue was the Third Ward Club.
Oh yeah.
My brother, both Robert Arthur, who was on the keyboard, the organ, and so on, and my younger brother Hunter was a singer. But I even remember my fraternity brothers grabbing their saxophone, said, Pete, Benny, where you going, man? He said, we're gonna groove at the Third Ward Club, because at that time it was the thing, it was taboo to go to the Third Ward Club. But it was the venue. Thank God that we have Jimmy's Jazz Funk.
Well, I don't know if you were around when the Bel Air Club was here.
Oh, no, I was in Europe.
Now,
at that time.
Dick Bell opened a place which would be located where the skating place is, like on Morris
Oh, yeah.
Avenue.
Right.
Yeah, and they had a balcony upstairs, and I used to go there when I was a youngster and watch the bands from up in the balcony. And they had some great, Jack McDuff used to come through there.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
All the time, and they had some great bands come through there, and that's how I got the bug, I wanted, if I wasn't going to be in a band, I was going to deal with music, and now I hire bands all the time. Some of them owe me money too, now that I think about it.
Before we go any further, for our new listeners, I just want to give a pause for the station identification. This is a panel discussion on African American musicians in safe spaces in Bloomington-Normal. It's being broadcast on 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org. Miss Carolyn Ware, during our interview, I asked about the Third Ward Club and if you ever played there. And you said, oh, no. I never played at such a place. So when Mr. Jack Waddell said that it was a taboo to play there, it made me think about Miss Ware's experience. But we also talked about the kind of gospel music that you played at the time and how it's different from the gospel music that plays at the church now. Can you tell us a bit about the hymns and some of the songs that you play at church?
Well, the music is different now than it was when I was playing. I did play a lot of hymns, and I could read music, and also I could play by ear. And I remember one time the choir was wanting to sing this song, and I could play it, but there was a run that I just couldn't get. And Professor Suggs was the organist at the church, and I was the pianist. So he wrote the notes out for me, not on staff paper, he just wrote the notes out. But I was able to get that run that I couldn't get before, by playing by ear. So that was one thing I learned from Professor Suggs, is he just wrote the notes out for me, and that was the best sound to me for the whole song is what he wrote out. But anyway, the music is different. Today is more like modern gospel, when before it was just traditional gospel. I think that it's a big difference in the music now.
I really appreciate you mentioning Dr. Frank Suggs. He was going to be here today, but unfortunately, he had some family matters that he had to tend to, so he was not able to make it. So for those who don't know, I'm going to read a little bit of his bio so we can get a great idea of who he was, because he was a huge influence on African American musicians here during his tenure. Dr. Frank Suggs is a retired professor of music of the music department at Illinois State University. He taught courses in gospel music, African American music, music for elementary school teachers, and music business. Suggs was a conduit for black musicians at Illinois State University, the church, youth bands, and the community. Suggs taught many who were in his attendance how to succeed in the music business. There are students of Dr. Suggs who played for Sting, Pat Martino. Some sang with Destiny's Child and the Thompson Community Singers Choir. Some recorded with Andre Crouch. And there were some who signed contracts with Warner Brothers and Jive Records. I spoke with Dr. Suggs over the phone, and I asked him, could he give me a statement or something to say, or to read in his proxy. And as you can see here, he had a lot to say. It was about a 12-minute statement. And I looked at the transcripts and I said, well, we don't have time to go over all of this, but he said so much. He mentioned that people by name, that he really was influenced by Mr. Chuck Tripp. If you hear Mr. Chuck Tripp, is he here today? He's not in attendance, but he mentioned Chuck Tripp. He mentioned Mr. Delmar Brown were some of his most esteemed students. But I'm going to read just a little bit of what he had to say. He says, Dr. Frank Suggs, he says, I moved to Bloomington-Normal in 1969. When I came here, they asked me to put a music course together, okay? So I put Black Music Course 153, since the department had no courses, and it had nothing that I had to have on my own ensemble to have my class hear the music. In the meantime, I figured out that music coming from Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, was different than the music we listened to. What I realized is that the music that they had in the department stayed with the melody and the harmony and then the rhythm. The music I was going to be putting together was the rhythm first, then the melody, then the harmony. So I had to work out a group, and I could figure out how they could learn to play. So he mentioned that, that his first performance that he had here was in 1970 at Wayman AME Church. So I kind of want Ms. Ware, if you can talk about a little bit about Dr. Suggs' influence on your cousin and the various musicians that was under his tenure and you as well.
Well, my cousin Delmar, I really don't know too much about. I just know my cousin Delmar loved to play music. He loved to play the organ. And so I think that they might have played together a lot. And so that, I mean, I really don't know too much about that type of music, or maybe they, Jimmy might know.
Delmar.
What they did with Delmar.
Delmar and Chuck Tripp and me were all in a band together called Band X from 67 to 72. And they weren't in the band initially when it started, but they both joined. Probably were in the band. I'm sure Delmar was there probably 2 or 3 years. Chuck was in the band probably for 2 or 3 years. And Delmar was an amazing player. I mean, there wasn't anything he couldn't do, and he sang. He was, I used to sing a little bit of James Brown stuff, and then Delmar came in the band, and I didn't even look at James Brown stuff anymore. I just said, okay, you do it. And Delmar would get out, and he would get up from the organ and walk out to the front of the stage, and you know, he'd do the splits, he'd do everything. You know, he was doing it. So everybody loved Delmar. Delmar was, well, he taught most of the people in the band, in our band that were already musicians, he taught a lot of them how to do certain things that, you know, took us. We had a great band at the time. Chuck was one of the best guitar players I'd seen around this area. We had probably 2 or 3 guitar players before Chuck came into the band, and then it was just, you know, Chuck blew everybody away. He was unbelievable. So those guys both left, if I remember, they went out east, went out to Boston, New York area, and then Delmar got on some big time and in New York, and had an illustrious career, went on to play, like he said, with Sting. He produced Pat Martino's albums. He played with a lot of great jazz players. And Chuck, he was up in Chicago. He's had several bands and had a very good career in Chicago too. So those guys were 2 of the guys that are in the band that went on to become very, very serious players. And I think that was due to Dr. Suggs. Well, partly. They were just naturally good too. But you know, when you got somebody that can guide you like that Dr. Suggs could, yeah, it was unbelievable.
I think that Jimmy and Carolyn make a very strong point, and Anthony as well, is that there are the only 2 kinds of music, good and bad. Yeah. And you don't know where the music is going to lead you. I went to Germany to pursue an opera career. The first contract I signed was doing the musical Hair. Totally different. The first TV show I did was Name That Tune, the German version of Name That Tune, did that singing everything. And the surprise to me in Germany was they were thrilled with the fact I would be recording with the jazz band in Cologne in the studio doing 3 or 4 recordings, and they'd come and say, hey, Waddell, when you finish here, would you go down and sing with the Philharmonic Orchestra, pouring in bass and sort of thing. The versatility that you have, you go where it leads you. In the musical Hairs, where I met Donna Summer, where I was hired to train the Germans, because at that time, the Germans couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time. And to teach them vocals, teach them how to sing, they cannot, don't have rhythm and so on. So you don't know where it's going to go with the flow. Roberta Flack, ironically, we had the same voice teacher in Washington. She wanted to be an opera singer. Well, she turned out to be one of the best ballad singers ever, she and Nina Simone, and sort of thing. But you go where music leads you, and I think Karen and Jimmy both agree, it all begins in church.
Oh,
Roberta Flack, Donna Summer, they all started in the church singing gospel music, and that was their inspiration.
In the history, in the same vein, we're celebrating Black history here, I'm sorry. I remember during our conversation, you mentioned doing a play and a big production. Actually, I attended it over at Illinois State University, where you covered the history of a man named John Jones. Can you tell us about that production?
Yeah, I would love to. I did Mark Twain, the musical, for 10 years in upstate New York, in Elmira, New York. And it was quite a big success. And after one of the performances, 3 African-American high school girls came back to me and said, Mr. Waddell, we have been given a charge from our history teacher to write a term paper on someone other than Mark Twain in the area. And we heard, our family has always told a legend of a man named John Jones, who was the superintendent of the Underground Railroad. And he was the connection from Elmira to Canada, because as you know, historically, slaves were not freed until they got to Canada. Then they could not be retrieved. The 1850 Fugitive Slave Act that required all slaves to be returned to the plantation. You were not freed until you got to the plantation. And they said, we want to find out if this legend is true, if John Jones actually existed. And the municipal government of Elmira were poised to tear down the house where John Jones lived, where he hid as many as 30 slaves in his basement, so before he could put them on a train to Canada. Would you do a benefit for us to save John Jones' house? Fast forward, of course, I was delighted to do a benefit concert for them. And now I'm very proud to let you, it's one of the highest achievements. And with gratitude, John Jones, his house is a national monument. And it's on the registered list that they saved the house where John Jones lived. He was quite a character. When he passed away, the governor of New York State presented him with a solid gold walking stick. And he was quite the figure. I appreciate you asking for that, because John Jones is a very significant part of our culture.
Mr. James Gaston, I understand that your club that you have now, Jazz Up Front, is not the first music business that you've owned. Can you tell us about your place that you had called After Hours?
Yeah, I was in Florida for close to 10 years, and I moved back to Bloomington, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, so I was driving down Main Street, and I saw there was this club that was available, and while I was in Florida, I happened to become friends with a gentleman by the name of Nat Adderley. I think some people in here probably know him, Cannonball Adderley's brother. He was a trumpet player. They had a group called the Nat Adderley Quintet. Well, I became a roadie for him in Florida, and I used to, go to all the gigs, help him carry equipment in and out, pick him up at the airport when he was flying back in from wherever he'd been in the world playing. And I was just hanging out with him and all the Florida musicians, and I saw this place that was available, and I thought, I ought to get that place and do some live music in there. So I checked into it. It was, I think, about December of '89, and was able to lease the place, and wanted to bring some live music in, and so I talked to a couple friends, and we got together and we made a nice club, and we did other things. I mean, we had some DJs in there, we had fundraisers, we did all different types of stuff, but my love was bringing in the live music, and we had Charles Erlin, and we had Brian Culbertson. We had several big-time players come through, Kevin Littau, and we brought, it's always been my love to listen. I love music, and that's what I'm about, and I like bringing it. And so we were there at Jazz Up Front for 5.5 years, and we did a lot of live music, and we had great. Oh, After Hours. I'm sorry. Did I say Jazz Up Front? Okay. Oh yeah, Mike Jones was a partner at the club. That's right. Yeah. Sorry I didn't mention you, Mike, but you got another chair up here? No, I'm kidding. That's my brother, Anyway, but no, it was fairly successful. We kind of at the end, the landlord was trying to sell the building, and of course we weren't his first, the first people he offered it to, so we had to close down, but I had the bug, so we kept moving on and doing other things. But After Hours was very successful, met a lot of people, did a lot of music, brought a lot of things to the community that I think a lot of people enjoyed over the years.
You also had a recent Grammy winner play at your club, is that correct?
Yeah, there's a young lady out of New York by the name of Samara Joy. Yeah, she was at Jazz Up Front. Wow. And the year she was there, she won Best Newcomer and Best Jazz Vocal Grammy. So, we were very fortunate to have her at the club, And of course, we've had Chichito Valdez there. He's got 7 Grammys. And we have a guy that plays there all the time, and by the name of Chip McNeil, and he's a professor at the University of Illinois in Champaign. He's got Grammy. Him and Arturo Sandoval did an album together, and he plays there a lot. And I'd love to see more people come to see him, because the guy is phenomenal. So, but just keep an eye on Jazz Up Front, and we're always going to keep bringing good music and providing a great nightlife for the community. So we're going to be there, and we just need more people to support.
That's right. Miss Carolyn Ware, it's often thought about and discussed and analyzed that, that there was Jim Crow going on in the United States, a time in the past where black people just were not allowed to go to certain restaurants and establishments. And most people think that only occurred in the South. But we know, and I learned through these oral histories, that Jim Crow was right here in this town. There was certain places that just did not welcome black folk. So Ms. Carolyn Ware, when we was talking, you mentioned some places that black people were allowed and welcomed, and can you talk a little bit about that, about places that you feel that just wasn't welcoming for black folk?
Well, gosh, that's been so long ago. But there were some places that we weren't allowed to go, and some places we weren't. I think like Woolworths had a lunch counter, and I don't think we were allowed to go there to eat. And then there were some other cafes or restaurants we weren't allowed to really go into. But that's been so long ago. And as a young person back in the 50s, you wasn't aware of a lot of that going on. But we only heard about it, So, because a lot of times we didn't go out to restaurants to eat anyway,
I can relate to that. The first job I had after I graduated in 1963 was to tour with the Norman Luboff Choir. I was the only African American in the choir. I had never been south of the Mason-Dixon line. In fact, I remember one of the members stood up in the tour bus and announced on the microphone, so ladies and gentlemen, we have just crossed the Mason-Dixon line. Would everyone turn their clocks back 100 years? But the story I would like to relate is pretty horrifying. Carolyn is absolutely right. To be able to attend and to sing on the Bob Jones University campus, I was the only African American in the choir. They had to get a written dispensation for me to appear on the campus. But the more horrifying story was on a free day. Everyone did the laundry. And I'm not thinking where I was. I thought, oh my God, yes, my laundry is overdue as well. I'll go with you. It was Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And I went with the rest of the choir and putting my stuff, in the washer and the dryer, not noticing that the laundromat was slowly emptying. All of a sudden, the door opens, and I swear it was the biggest, the tallest, the meanest looking state trooper I've ever seen in my life, walked over to me with his service revolver drawn and put to the temple of my head. I need I tell you, it gives a new meaning to be frozen stiff, scared stiff. They literally had to carry me out of the laundromat. Leave your clothes here, we'll get everything we'll do. But that was my first experience in 1963. We were on tour when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. That was also another experience. But Jim Crow was alive and well, and Carolyn is absolutely right.
I can remember when I was a youngster, we used to go to the skating rink, which was on the Lafayette Club. Where the Lafayette Club is now, it was the skating place. Sunday night was black night. We could go on Sunday night. And we were out there having a great time one night, and then somebody stopped and screamed, and we all went over and looked out, and they were burning a cross right outside the skating place door or window, and we were all standing around, just you could hear a pin drop, and everybody just was stopped and staring at this cross. We're in Bloomington, Illinois, you know, we're like,
Right.
we had never witnessed anything like that before, but that actually happened, and I'm sure Mike was there that night, probably. And then I just wanted to say, too, the place that Jazz Up Front is at now, it's called the Empire Lounge. When I was a youngster, we used to go to the Saratoga and stuff like that. And talking about places blacks weren't welcome, well, they weren't welcome in the Empire Lounge. And now I'm in there, I own the joint, so yeah.
Well, you heard it here. My name is Andrew Thomas, and I'm the chairperson for the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project, and you just listened to the second part panel of the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project presents a reunion with neighbors, friends, and musicians. And today, we were celebrating African-American musicians and safe spaces. So please give a warm sound of applause for Mr. Waddell, Ms. Carolyn Ware, and Mr. James Gaston.
How about Andrew?
Yeah, Anthony.
So we still have a few minutes left, and we just want to remind you that after this is said and done, we're going to go over to Mr. James Gaston's club, Jazz Up Front, and there's going to be a jam session. We have Mr. Gary Muhammad and his jam session band will definitely be the house band this evening. So that's going to be a good time. But we still have time, a few minutes left, to open up the floor for questions.
That's Phil Donahue here.
So my name is Corey Byrne. I'm a local music teacher. First of all, thank you so much for coming out. I will say it's very pleasing to hear Dr. Suggs' name. I was an alumni of his black music class from about 30 years ago, so I haven't heard his name in a long time. It's very good to hear that again. My question for the panel was, what do you see as a need what do you see that schools can do to help make the music classroom a safe space for not only black music, but for young black musicians as well?
He's talking to you. Yeah. What was the question?
Could you repeat that, please?
So, yes, what do you see schools can do to help make the music classroom a safe space not only for black music, so black music can thrive in local school classrooms, but also for young black musicians as well?
If I may say, not only does that apply to history, we can begin with telling American history the way it occurred. Now that the horrific effort that is being made to disenchantise people the right to vote, the banning of books, it's unthinkable the direction that certain factions are endeavoring to take us. Maya Angelou said, we must get to the point where we talk about American history, not black African American history, not Native history, history, American history. We must return to those values, and history is being taught the way history went down from 1619 to there is a concerted effort to turn the clock back. We ain't going back. Enough said.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We can take one more here. Mrs. Foster.
Thank you so much for your presentation and your information. And it's unfortunate that when we talk about history, the things that you talk about, we never heard of. Nowhere we can read it. And so we're thankful to what is happening here today and all the work that is being done to capture that information and to know that it's being filmed and recorded. How do we, as people of color, how do we come across to others? How do we capture the rich history that has been experienced? And how do we ensure that our young people are aware that there are contributions that has been made to make our community what it is today? How do we go from not contributing to there's a history of contribution, whether it's in the church, whether it's in the schoolhouse, whether it is in employment? We have made great strides, but how do we ensure that the truth is being told and not just during Black History Month?
Well, I would think a start is just like something that we're doing today. You know, we're in here. We're all from different walks of life, different people, and we're talking. And, you know, put the phones down, you know, close the laptop for a minute, you know, and just sit and talk and reach out to your neighbor, you know, speak to people. I think people talk at people, but they don't talk to people. And we need to listen more.
All right.
And I take my hat off to the museum and Woody and Andrew for, you know, let's start the dialogue. This is a good start. We could have something like this, you know, once a month or, you know, once every 2 weeks. Let's just get together and just, whatever question you have on your mind, let's talk. You know, leave your phone in the car, leave your, you know what I mean? Tape your thumbs down and let's actually talk. I mean, we don't need to text. You know, let's talk. I think that's the start of anything. And I know that people I've met in my life, white, black, red, whatever, when you sit down and actually talk to them, you know, you find out there's not that much difference. You know, everybody's trying to do the same thing, you know. So, yeah, let's just start talking. I think that's the beginning of what you're asking right there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Also, I'd just like to add to letting our young people know that, especially those in this community, that even people like Delmar Brown, this is one of the last CDs that he produced, you can be somebody, you know, no matter how small the town is. If you want to be something, you can be somebody. And they're letting our young people know there's a lot of people that have become famous right here just from being, wanting to be somebody.
If I may add to that as well, Carolyn, you're right. Truth, what she said, truth is the operative word. They must be prevented from their efforts, their endeavors to rewrite history. From 1619, they want to flip the script. Real history as it was. The fact that George Washington, during his presidency, had over 300 slaves. The fact that Thomas Jefferson incarcerated Sally Hemings for his sexual pleasure, and they produced 6 children. The true history, we cannot turn our backs and whitewash history. It is imperative that our young students know their history. Without truthful history, there is no future.
My name is Trista Brown. I'm from Joliet, Illinois, and I graduated from Illinois State University, and I also was under the direction of Mr. Suggs. But what I want to say is, what you got going on right now is so beautiful. I really admire this museum because we're in Joliet is trying to start a black museum in our area. And what I thought when I was listening to what she was saying, the best way that we can give information is to share it. Share it at the table. Share it in your churches. Put on tours. Get to know your neighboring areas. And so I'm so proud when I come in, when I think of Gary, and I think of people that I haven't seen in so long since I came here in 1978, but when I look at this is where history starts. Our young people, they should also know the truth, but they also know the heroes that they have within their towns. And when I see each one of you, it makes me so proud to know that I don't have to just go back to Martin Luther King. I don't have to just be black for a day. But because when I see each one of you, I am black every day and so excited just to see each one of you from your own history. And I think that's what's important. When you start with what you have right now and you share it to each other, that's going to trickle down. Because even though we came from a beautiful place when it comes to history, but we also got some beautiful people that survived that. And through each one of you, I am so proud today just to come to this museum, and I can take a lot of lessons back home to Joliet, Illinois, just because of this day. So because of Gary, he continues and his legacy to share this information to keep Bloomington alive. And so that to me was great truth information. So I just wanted to say that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. That is phenomenal. It's not every day that somebody will get up and say what's on their mind. And it was mentioned before, we need to continue to do that. Madam President, NAACP, good question. A little other background here. I know we got started at 100 miles an hour. We slow it down a little bit. This is a history museum, right? I said everybody in here was friends of mine that I knew, and then more people came, and I was more people that I don't know. So I think it's only correct that I introduce myself. My name is Jeff Woodard. I'm the Director of Marketing and Community Relations for the McLean County Museum of History. I came here in 2005 to work for the marketing department. Prior to that, I was working for Mitsubishi Motors in 1989, and I worked in the library as a volunteer. I said all that to say this. That's when I learned, when I came here, I thought that I really didn't belong. But when I learned what was happening with the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project, I learned that it was the furthest from the truth. People like Dr. Mildred Pratt, Joe Monroe, Carol Bell Washington, Willie Tripp, and others, Reggie Whitaker, And all these folks, I didn't even know them. But once I got to know them through studying the history, it set me on fire. And we've been going ever since. The question about what do we do? We're fortunate enough that we tell the history of all the people in McLean County. So I'm with you. We don't have to have a Black History Month. We're Black History 365 here. Making a Home exhibit down on the first floor. Community in Conflict. Even Abraham Lincoln in McLean County can kind of set you straight on where we're at in terms of the history of African Americans in McLean County, race, and everything else you speak of. Also, I want to add that we did a exhibit here, Presence, Pride, and Passion, a history of African Americans. Some of you might remember that. There was an 8th grade learning series that came out of that, and it's in every library in the county. And thanks to our digital humanities person in the back who's doing our technology today, give it up for Tori Moray. Thanks to Tori, a lot of these resources are available online. They're at your fingertips. The Black History Project, a lot of the interviews, and that. Someone talked about Woolworths. I believe it was Carolyn, you talked about Woodworth. I can see it from here. This is real stuff. It's right there. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that. But the more we know, as generic as it sounds, the more we grow, right? And we're going to continue to do this. This just warms my heart, really. Some of these folks I've been known for years, but this is my opportunity to say to you, I am because of all of you. That's it. So, before we close, it's customary that we give you a little gift. Mr. Gaston, Mr. Waddell. Thank you. Mrs. Carolyn Ware.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then, one other thing I'd like to do, I've been having to hold this for a long time, but now we're ready. So get ready. Is there anyone here from other than the nephew here, Mr. Waddell, is anyone here from the Oscar Waddell family? Anybody related to Oscar Waddell here? Okay, that's okay. But I'll ask you to come up. Stand up.
Pardon?
Yes, sir. And then I was going to ask that the members of the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project Committee join me here as well. We're going to court. Sir, you as well. The late Oscar Waddell, a Normal native, during his lifetime, completed major research on his and other Normal families. And he has been responsible for a large portion of the museum's collection in this regard. Some time ago, because we know this, right? How do we know what we know, right? Primary resources, files. We have about 11 or 12 boxes, acid-free museum boxes like this, with everything on the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project. It's an amazing treasure trove, and we've got one of the greatest collections of African American history in the state of Illinois. And it's because of people like Oscar Waddell and the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project. So going back, we also learned, as we did a reboot in 2015, we went back in the stacks and we learned that we need to do a little better job. Back when these folks started, they sponsored a Oscar Waddell Fellows Award Committee. Were you aware of that? No. That's what I'm talking about, right? So what they would do in terms of giving out scholarships and awards to people who did scholarly research on African Americans in McLean County, they would award a scholarship. And as I understand, there's a gentleman here who came up with, my box is back there, with about 10 oral history interviews to make this panel possible. He's also working on a thesis and possibly a book. With that said, I'm going to just ask you to give me a warm round for the now recipient of the Oscar Waddell Fellows, Mr. Andrew.
I didn't know.
We got him.
Got it.
So as we went back and looked at the records,
Well deserved.
we went back and looked at the records, and they said at the time that they would award up to $350. Well, that's been 25 years ago. So with inflation, we're going to present Andrew with a check for $500. Keep working, man. Keep working. Keep working.
Appreciate this.
So in closing, I'd like to say again, thank you. Thank you so much. I honor you all. In the words of one of my favorites, Dr. Maya Angelou, the late doctor, we are more alike than we are unalike. Let's keep it moving. Thank you. We'll see you guys up front.